Freedom the people of need, yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want, freedom the people of need, yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want, freedom the people of need, yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want, freedom the people of need, yeah, yeah. Real man a road, now bow wolf in a tree grand a road, now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road, now bow wolf in no tree grand a road, now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain, that when you free up the people, levitate. Jamaica member, you ever great. I feel burn up the fire upon every snake. Me give thanks in every way. God still a look down once see we safe. A UIC run the road long time. GLP and PMP a sell we out. Still I do the test even though we know the end result. If them coulda kill with them catch we and hang we know. No force, no coercion, me freedom in a step. No one fi rob we and kill we and feel them and go make it out. You know see the leeches, you know see the hands of the devil when him sleep with. You know see the leeches, you know see the hands of the devil when him sleep with. Yeah, yeah. Real man a road, now bow wolf in no tree grand a road, now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road, now bow wolf in no tree grand a road, now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Yeah, me drop the braffing now, and then I laughing now. What them talking about? Everything's.
Good evening, my fellow Jamaicans, my friends. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have a very important topic to talk about. We're going to be talking about fake versus true republic. The questions that we want to answer tonight is how does a fake republic affect our economy? What is a real republic? Why are Barbados, the US, China, Trinidad, North Korea, and other so called republics not true republics? The UIC's non-partisan constitutional republic will also be explained tonight. Let's begin by looking at what is called republicanism. Republicanism was the guiding political philosophy of the United States at its birth. It stressed individual liberty and unalienable rights as its central values, making the people sovereign as a whole, while rejecting monarchy, aristocracy, and inherited political power as acceptable forms of government. The American founding fathers felt that republicanism represented more than a particular form of government. It was to them a way of life, a core ideology, an uncompromising commitment to liberty, and a total rejection of aristocracy or elitism. The founders of the United Independence Congress of Jamaica tends to agree. The term republicanism is derived from the term republic, but the two words have very different meanings. A republic is a form of government, one without a hereditary ruling class, while republicanism refers to the values of citizens in a true republic. The UIC aims to make Jamaica a true republic that embraces republicanism. Patrick Henry, one of the American founding fathers, once noted that when the American spirit was first in its youth, the language of America was different. Liberty, sir, was the primary objective. Henry is remembered for his "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. This statement reminds us of our own national hero, Samuel Sharp, who boldly declared, "I would rather die on Yando gallows than live in slavery." Sharp instigated the 1832 slave revolt that helped to end slavery in 1838. Liberty in philosophy means involving being free. It is contrasted against determinism. In politics, liberty consists of the social and political freedoms to which all community members are entitled. In theology, liberty is freedom from the bondage of sin. Generally, liberty is distinctly differentiated from freedom, in that freedom is primarily, if not exclusively, the ability to do as one wills and what one has the power to do, whereas liberty concerns the absence of arbitrary restraints and takes into account the rights of all involved. As such, the exercise of liberty is subject to capability and limited by the rights of others. Very important to note. We, the people of Jamaica, have been fighting for our freedom from the beginning of the Euro Africa slave trade. Our fight started long before the American Revolution began in 1765. Jamaica's Nanny of the Maroons, our only female national hero, is most remembered for leading the fight for our freedom. By 1720, she had already controlled a large part of the Blue Mountains. She refused to remain a slave, escaped to the hills, and successfully led her army to repel the British. Queen Nanny, as she was affectionately called, secured freedom for her people on 500 acres of land in the parish of Portland. The fight for freedom is both individual and collective for our people. But there is a dichotomy between individualism and collectivism, where some believe the collective vision takes precedence over individual liberty. The UIC is committed to fostering, promoting, and advocating individual liberty as the first object of a free society, and the collective liberty or sovereignty of Jamaica as necessary for the first. The supreme law of liberty is based on the principle of self ownership, the idea that you are the owner of you. To deny yourself ownership would be to give another human being a higher claim on your life than yourself. Under this law, no other person or group of persons may own you, and you may not own others. Your life is your individuality and your individual liberty. It is measured in time, past, present, and future. Individual liberty means you have the inalienable right to choose how to spend your time. The product of your time and talents is your property to enjoy as you see fit. To lose the products of your time and talents is to lose a part of your past. To lose your individual liberty is to lose your present. To lose your life is to lose the possibility of your future. The products of your life belongs to you and should not be taken away without your voluntary consent. The products of your life include not only the products of your time and talents, but also that part of your nature or that part of nature that you have converted into valuable property and property that you have earned through voluntary exchange with others. Two persons who voluntarily exchange property are both better off. Otherwise, they would not have entered into the transaction. Only they might rightfully value or set the price for what they exchanged and make that decisions for themselves. Some people use force or fraud to take the property of others without their willful, voluntary consent. But under the law of liberty that the UIC stands for, the initiation of force to take away life is considered murder. To initiate force to take away liberty is considered slavery. And to use force to take away property is theft. It is the same whether these actions are done by one person acting alone or by many acting against a few. even if democratically decided. You have the right to protect your own life, your own liberty, and your own property from others, including a government who might seek to take or invade them by force. You may also join with others to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. But you have no right to initiate force against the life, liberty, or property of others. And you have no right to designate a person or a group or any government to initiate force against others on your behalf. You are free to set up a ruler over yourself, but you have no right to impose the same on others. No matter how rulers are selected, they are only human beings, and as such, they should have no rights or claims that are higher than those of any other human being. No matter how lofty their ideas or promises, no matter how many people voted for them or supported them, rulers have no right to murder, they have no right to enslave, and they have no right to steal. And you can give them no rights that you do not have yourself. If it is wrong for you to murder, if it is wrong for you to enslave others, if it is wrong for you to steal what belongs to others, it is also wrong for every other individual, every other group, or any government, elected or otherwise, to do these things. Every individual is a sovereign soul, a sovereign entity under the law of liberty. Under the law of liberty, you own your life and you are responsible for that life. You do not rent your life from others, so none have the right to demand your obedience. You're not a slave to others, so none can demand your sacrifice or exercise control over your life or over your body. You choose your own goals based on your own values, understanding that the potential for success and failure are both necessary incentives to your personal learning and growth. The possibility of you unknowingly contracting or transmitting a disease to others does not give you or others the right to use or initiate force or fraud against the life, the liberty, or property of anyone in order to guard against an infection. Your action on behalf of others or their action on behalf of you can only be virtuous when it is derived voluntarily from mutual consent, since virtue can only exist where there is free choice. This is the only basis of a truly free society. It is not only the most humanitarian way of life, it is the most ethical and practical form of civilization to guard against tyrants, despots, and dictatorships. Many of the problems we have in our world today are related to governments initiating force or fraud to promote a so called common good. They do this to benefit some instead of protecting the basic human rights of individual liberty for all. The solution to these problems is to remove from government the power to initiate force against anyone. And remember that evil does not arise from bad people alone, but from good people who allow the initiation of force or fraud against others to satisfy their own misguided, selfish ends. By this means, many good people have sanctioned evil throughout the course of history. The law of liberty invites us to enjoy the virtues of a free society by embracing a marketplace of ideas instead of building a battlefield of politically imposed visions or goals. Using government to force or impose an idea, a vision, or values on others is intellectual cowardice, which only results in perverse, unintended consequences. Promoting and protecting individual liberty as the foundation of all human rights is the only hope of achieving a truly free and fair society. It requires it requires of us all the courage to think, to talk, and to act in defense of individual liberty, even when it appears easier to do nothing. So tonight, I want you to bear these points in mind as we discuss a very, very important topic. Do we want Jamaica to be a true republic, or do we want to join a long list of fake republics? Tonight, I have in studio virtually with me Mr. Devon Thompson, who many of you know. He has served as a vice president of the UIC. He has also served as director of communications and operations. Mr. Thompson is here with me tonight to discuss the topic of true versus fake republic. Welcome, Mr. Thompson.
Can you hear me, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I
Yes,
can hear you loud and clear. How are you? You know,
thanks. Welcome.
let me apologize. I also forgot to, you have so many titles: former vice president, um, former director of communications and operations, but you're also the UIC's Minister of Public Works and Energy. Welcome, Mr. Thompson, and sorry for the omission.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, I've been listening clearly about what you're saying just now, and I want everyone listening here to not feel intimidated by what you're saying. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance in society when it comes to this because we were taught so many things growing up only as an adult to realize that it was all wrong and it was all lies. So the things that Mr. Patterson is talking to you right now, these are things that I have come to know within the last 5 years, right? And it's through me being open to information, being open to listening, being open to learning, that I was able to accept this information, right? We see the comments, for example, on social media. When the UIC posts about certain things, people get upset, right? They think that the UIC is attacking Barbados or Trinidad, but that's not the case, because Barbados, Trinidad, they're not the only ones who have this quote unquote kind of republic out there. The USA itself is not a true republic; it's a fake republic. Yet the UIC is the closest country on this planet to a republic, right? So these are things that we learn as time goes by. We learn from research. You can go on, for example, the ACLU website and learn about these things, because you're going to find that all of these countries, they implement something called a Charter of Rights or a Bill of Rights after the fact. So when they created the Constitution in the beginning, they didn't create it to protect your rights. There was no such thing as a Bill of Rights in the first American Constitution. There was no such thing as fundamental human rights and freedoms in the first Jamaican Constitution. These things were all added after the fact. It's an afterthought. So what the UIC did, the UIC said, hey, we are going to correct the mistake that they made, and we're going to make the natural born human rights and freedoms of the Jamaican people be a forethought. That is the thing that you have to focus on when you're creating a constitution. I think you're muted. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah,
There you go.
well said, Devon. You made a very important point. For most, in fact, for all of the countries around the world today, except for the US, your individual rights, your Bill of Rights, was an afterthought, because all of these countries are coming out of what they called either a monarchy or some form of dictatorship. A monarchy is a dictatorship. Whether they have a nice fancy crown and wonderful robes and drive in a carriage, it's still a dictatorship. And it's a dictatorship not just by one person, but a group of persons coming together to organize a way to trick the people and therefore have control over the people so they can extract the wealth of the people. Whether they have a serfdom or they have a outright chattel slavery or they have wage slavery like we have today, or they take over the banking system and centralize it and create a fictitious monetary system. All of these things are ways in which a few people try to enslave the majority of people. So they'll go through any means to get that done. We in the UIC are trying to steer Jamaica in a direction to understand these things and then to set up for the first time in the history of the world a true republic. America came very close to setting up a true republic. In fact, they had every intention to set up a true republic, but they got lost along the way.
Yes.
One of the things is whenever you have a moral compass problem, it's hard for you to set up the things you really want to set up. So, for example, let's say you're a person who really believe in the rights of children, but you are a child abuser. If you're asked to then write the laws to protect the rights of children, you might find that even though your intentions are pure, you might be compromised in your efforts at writing such a protective law. And that's what happened in the US because they had slavery and they also, subsequent to slavery, preserved forms of segregations and discrimination and so on. So it's difficult for them to have a perfect constitution, but they came very close. I was quite impressed. I'm very impressed, actually, with the American Constitution because it really tried to create a true republic. But I want to show the people now where America went wrong and is going wrong. And then we can learn from that and see why the UIC says Barbados is a fake republic, why we say Guyana and Trinidad, which happened much earlier, are also fake republics, and why we say China is definitely a fake republic, and so on. Now let's look at a video I'm going to show you that speaks to what went wrong in America. I want you to understand a key word in this video. It's called oligarchy. I want you to understand also the spectrum from an all-powerful government, where government has 100% control over our lives, and anarchy, where government has no control over our lives. In fact, there is no government. So anarchy on the one hand and oligarchy on the other. Somewhere in the middle between oligarchy and anarchy is where we're going to find a true republic. But it won't be easy because you're going to have other confusing arrangements which tries to confuse the issue so that we don't land on a true republic. But tonight, after we're done with this session, you will know what a true republic is and nobody will be able to fool you. You might have seen earlier today PJ Patterson, my namesake, advocating that Andrew Holness and Mark Golding come together once again. They've done it before. They came together in 1962 to give us a fake constitution with a monarchy as head of state over Jamaica. And now he wants them to come together again to put together a fake republic and tell Jamaicans that we're now free, when in fact we would not be. So watch this and be aware of how they're going to do this. Well, we're going to stop them. If with your vote for the UIC, we're going to stop them from doing this. But watch carefully.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates. So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, democracy ruled by a majority, republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these five, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common form of government today. Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few, and therefore oligarchy remains. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments, so they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law there can be no freedom. Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society. In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property, and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times. Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government. Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everyone freer. There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum where something rushes in to fill it. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany, where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. It's a temporary condition, and because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin, res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35-1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario in a republic. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35-1 to hang him, but the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous or he goes free. The rights of the government aren't subject to majority rule but to the law. This is the essence of a republic. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." Alexander Hamilton agreed, and he stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." Samuel Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The founders had good reason to look upon democracy with contempt, because they knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable. In every case, they ended up with mob rule, then anarchy, and finally tyranny under an oligarchy. During that period in Greece, there was a man named Solon who urged creation of a fixed body of law not subject to majority whims. But where the Greeks never adopted Solon's wise counsel, the Romans did. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law, and in effect built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone. Since government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. When government power grows, people freedom recedes. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet, and they went on the dole. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets, demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy, and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars. Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the gradual transition from limited government to the unlimited rule of an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite.
My job to make college easier because students have a
Okay.
lot on their
Sorry,
plates. Like Harper, an econ
just a
major who
second.
piles on the pressure. Grammarly can.
Whoops.
There you go.
Sorry about that. I'm having a hard time with this thing here. All right, good.
That
So,
that was educational.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there are some things there that I did not know. That was very much educational.
So that's the reason why we share these things. The UIC is actually
Mm.
the educational party. We're committed to educating Jamaicans so that we can make the right choices. There are some key things that should have jumped out at people in this video. You should have seen, very importantly, the political spectrum being dissected so that once and for all you'll understand what we're talking about. What I've gathered from not just this video, but years of studying on looking at government and how it works, is that there are really four main areas: dictatorship, democracy, republic, and anarchy.
Mhm.
Dictatorship comes in many forms, whether it's going to be a monarchy or it's going to be an oligarchy, but it's really some people dictating to everybody else.
Mhm.
Some people having more rights than everybody else. You know, a king being born with the right to decide who lives and who dies. Who gives him that right? Who gives a king the authority to decide who lives and who dies? So from dictatorship, we go to something called democracy, which is really a disguise for oligarchy. So whenever you see the word democracy, you can replace it with oligarchy. Let's look at Jamaica. Jamaica is considered to be a parliamentary democracy under a monarchy, right? A monarchical democracy, if you will. But what's really happening? What you have is a few people, those in the elite who funds the two major party, therefore decides who gets elected through funding the nominees, and therefore being able to control the legislative agenda so that the laws and regulations are designed to protect your big businesses, to suppress small businesses, and to make the majority of Jamaicans wage slaves. So that's an oligarchy. So Jamaica is actually an oligarchy, using the word democracy to mask the reality of what we're seeing. And remember, oligarchy means being ruled by a few. Democracy means mob rule. Well, you might think that the majority is voting for something, but the majority is actually led by somebody. For example, right now, even though the UIC has been around for a while, few Jamaicans know about us. Why? Because even though today we're discussing Republic on TVJ and CVM, the UIC is not going to be a part of that discussion. They won't invite us to be a part, so the Jamaican people won't hear us explaining what a republic is and why we need to be a true republic and not a fake one. If there's an issue of crime and violence, you won't hear TVJ coming to the UIC or CVM or the many radio stations or the Gleaner or the Observer coming to the UIC. They only come to the UIC if they want to find a way to ridicule or something like that. So basically, the elites of Jamaica, the oligarchs, control the media. They also control the political arms. They control both of them so they can get their way. The oligarchs also control the banking system, so they decide who gets access to credit and capital, and therefore they also control the regulations. You know, who can be in business, to what extent they can be in business, what laws will apply to them, and so on. So Jamaica is an oligarchy. Now, PJ Patterson is saying it's time for us to become a republic. What he means is, based on the temperature in Jamaica now, the people are getting restless and they're beginning to feel that something isn't right. Let's now distract them with something new and say, let's go to republic now. But it's not a republic. It's simply going to mean removing the queen. So we no longer have that face to point to as a problem, and to say we're now changing and give us something to clap about and to celebrate and to say, yay, we're now free, but we're still slaves. Exactly what is happening in Barbados right now, exactly what was done in Trinidad, exactly what was done in Ghana, and the same thing that was done in 1838 when they freed the slaves but didn't free them. In other words, what they did, they said to the slaves, you're now free, but you will have no education, no land, and no capital. which means you still have to come back to your slave masters and beg them for a job. So you're not free. And in 1944, when they also said, now you have the right to vote, what did that mean? Nothing, because all you could do is vote for the two parties that the colonial masters permitted to exist, and which the elite, the brown skinned elite, manipulated and managed by the white skinned colonial masters, would now set the basis for how we'll operate. And so your voting is not. We simply distracted you, so you stop seeing the colonial master as your problem and you start fighting each other. You start to kill each other now, beat up each other for small political spoils and gains in that regard. So they have tricked us all over again. So there are really only two forms of government. Either you have a true republic, or you have an oligarchy. What do you say to that, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, because the oligarchies, they trick people into thinking that they actually have control, right? Using the media and using other forms of control mechanisms. So they make you think that your vote matters, even though they select the individual, or they select the groups that you're supposed to be voting for. Because regardless if it's the Republicans or the Democrats, if it's the PNP or the JLP, or whatever political party it is that's from Wacky Philo, right? They put these parties there and they ensure that they fund them. So regardless of who gets voted in, the outcome remains the same, which is why
Absolutely.
the UIC, which is why the mainstream media, PNP and the JLP cannot allow the voice of the UIC to reach the masses, because the UIC is not controlled by these oligarchs, or not controlled by their money. But I want to tell the Jamaican people something, and this is something that you will not hear from the PNP, you're not hear from the JLP. As a matter of fact, you will not hear this from any politician anywhere on the planet. And this is why you must continue to tune into the UIC. One of the things that the UIC does, and I learned this very well from Mr. Patterson. Mr. Patterson studies governments, he studies politicians, and he learns how they trick people, right? So I've begun to do the same thing. I've begun to teach myself how they trick people. So that my first step was buying this book. This book here, and I need you all to buy it. This book is called The 48 Laws of Power. I guarantee you that every single politician, every single prime minister, and if not them, their advisors have read this book, and the sister book to it called The 33 Strategies of War. You read this book and you are going to realize how they have been able to trick millions of people for so long. This when I read the first pages of this book, I was horrified, Mr. Patterson. I was horrified, because I was like, oh, so this is what they've been doing. This is how they've been controlling the minds of the people. So the UIC is an educational organization. Yes, I know we're a political party, but at the end of the day, if you don't understand what the UIC is about, those politicians in the PNP and the JLP will use the laws in this book to trick you into thinking that the UIC is not the best thing for Jamaica.
Absolutely. So here's what we all have to do, and many are beginning to do this. We must get Jamaicans to subscribe to UIC Liberty TV all across the country and outside of Jamaica. We, each and every one of you, people tell me every day, they said, Mr. Patterson, I went to this community or that community, or I call my relatives here, and they said they know nothing about the UIC. That's fine, because now you have a chance to educate them. And now you have a chance to tell them how to learn more about the UIC and encourage them to tell others about it. Right now, we're putting together 228 councillor candidates across the country. This weekend, we meet with more of them. Every weekend, we're meeting with 25, 30, 40, 50 people around the country. So you don't see us on TV, but we're moving around to the communities. Little by little, we're going to get there. But we need your help to do it. We cannot do it alone. We also need your money. You have to remember, the UIC does not get funding by the private sector organization of Jamaica, and their very big and powerful companies that fund the other two parties. We also have no access to your tax dollars. So we're not getting any of your taxes. So all that we're doing here is being done out of my pocket, Mr. Thompson's pocket, Mr. Carr's pocket, Mrs. Mackenzie Williams' pocket, Mrs. Patterson's pocket, Mr. Winston Wright's pocket, Mr. Andrew Carey's pocket, Mr. Howard McDonald's pocket, Mr. Kadeem Nelson's pocket. Who have I missed, Devon? You know,
Mhm.
so all of these people, and there are some of you who are giving monthly. You're giving $10 a month, $25 a month, US, Canadian, British pound, $1,000 Jamaican. That's the only way we're going to be able to reach Jamaicans. If you sit there and wait for the UIC to be popular by virtue of the oligarchs supporting us, it will never happen. They are happy to tell you that third parties cannot win. And they're right. No third party can win without your support. If you sit, they have taught us very well to sit and wait for parties to spring up and wait for them to come and buy our votes and wait for them to buy television ads and wait for them to buy newspaper ads. If you sit and wait for them, for a party to come about and for somebody else to pay for it, you will only be in a worse and worse and worse condition. So we have to come together. If you notice, the UIC has a very nice logo. Our logo shows two hands coming together because it's only by us working together can we overthrow the system that they have and bring in a true republic to protect your rights and freedom as Jamaicans. Now, let me share with you, if I can. I'm going to try now to share.
Before that, Mr. Patterson,
Yes.
Deborah Boyle said you forgot her.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Uh, I know I would. You said the worst thing, is to call names, But yes, Deborah Boyle, who has from her pocket, Kame Locke from her pocket.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying now, Devon. Hold on. Let me,
So
push my memory
it
here.
doesn't make sense to try because there are
No,
lots more who have joined us in the past couple of weeks who are
I
printing
know.
flyers. They're not even
Yes.
saying anything to us. They say, okay, all right, print flyers, community,
Yeah, there
right?
are people. There are people who are printing T-shirts right now on their own. They
Yeah.
call. They call Mrs. Patterson. Please send me the logo, and they're printing their T-shirt. You have Tanya
No,
Telwell. You have Tammy Telwell. You
yeah.
have. I'm gonna call some name. It's okay. Carlene
Ramirez, Acosta.
Ramirez Acosta. You have all these people out there who are brave, who are standing up, who are pushing forward without any big financing from anybody. So,
Mhm.
my friends, here's what you can do. If you have not yet adopted a candidate in the UIC, just raise your hand. Write to us, go to our website, send us an email, or go to our number, 2930812 of course, and send a message. I want to adopt a candidate. You know what I like about our candidates, Devon? They're mostly young. Of them are young people. And you know that young people don't have no money in this country because they're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to survive. They don't have any money. They're broke. And the worst thing too, even many of us who are older, not so young, we're broke too. And so, you know,
Yeah.
so 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 really, you're anybody,
Mhm.
where you're there Canada, you can send $25, or you're there England, you can send £10, or you're there US, and you can send a 50 US, whatever it is.
Yes.
Adopt a candidate and help. Here's what the money is going to go to: gas in the car or taxi for them to move around, data on their phone so they can connect online and communicate with their constituents around the place, phone credit to make calls, refreshments as they're traveling around in the hot sun in the crevice and corner. They need food, they need drink, and so on. Material, printed material. Everything is expensive, so none of this is free. We have drawn out of our pockets because we believe in freedom. We believe in rescuing Jamaica from what it is in so far. If we don't rescue Jamaica, the dollar is going to continue to slide. All of you out there that's over 30 years old, you remember what the dollar used to be and what it is now. Food prices. Some food prices have gone up 50%, some 100%. Construction material. Everything here is super expensive. So we, my friends, have to step up to the table and help this party to succeed. Somebody wrote Marlon Millis. How could I forget Marlon Millis as well for his massive contribution to all of this? I'm getting into trouble for having mentioned names, but it's okay.
There are lots
I,
more names.
yeah, but hey, that's good. But back to our topic, we are talking about the issue of you know true republic versus fake republic. So a true republic is based on the rule of law. This is very important. A true republic is based on the rule of law. A fake republic is based on the whims of men, the whims of politicians, the whims of voters. So if they can find something to trick the voters with and the voters get emotional about it and vote, then that comes into place. And they use that now to undermine your economy and hurt you. Look at what happened during this pandemic here. People never thought we could ever get to the place where we have a prime minister doing some of the things that are being done right now. But look at that. We see clearly how dictatorial the system can get if we don't put proper checks and balances in place. So a true republic have the rule of law, and those laws must be objective. There must be laws that are so well defined that they clarify that as an individual, your personal sovereignty is off the table. No government can violate your right to your life, your liberty, or your property. So, for example, they can't mandate injecting you. They can't come and just tax you anyhow they want. That's why the UIC has a cap on taxation. So we said the government cannot tax you more than 10% of your income. Full stop. Never again. And a GCT, a sales tax of 10% that we bring in only to help to correct the poverty problem and get our people into proper housing, proper healthcare, proper nutrition, and bring up our human capital in the country. So a true republic equals the rule of law, equals limited government powers, equals protection of your individual rights. You are protected as sovereign. The government now exists to serve you, and not you exist to serve the government and those behind it, those oligarchs. What do you have to say to that, Devon?
Definitely, agree 100%. And the UIC has been preaching this for a very, very, very long time. And as I said to everybody that's watching this, I don't want you to be intimidated by the information. If you don't agree with it yet, just take some time out to research. Go on the UIC's website, read the About Us page, to see what we're saying. As a matter of fact, one of the things that you can do to see that what the UIC is saying is facts, read the American Constitution, read the Russian Constitution, and read the Constitution of any Caribbean island. Right. So read those
Yes.
three constitutions. So
Mhm.
one day I just took the time and I read all three, and I realized reading all three why each of them don't work and why
Yes.
each of them they infringe on the rights of their citizens. Like Russia
Mhm.
calls itself a republic. But when you read the Russian constitution, they're saying the government is responsible for you. Well, that's exactly why they're infringing on the rights of their citizens, right? Right? You're responsible for yourself, right? The
Exactly.
government responsibility is to protect you from it and to protect you from others.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, when you have a true republic, what you ended up with is every single person in the country understands the law. Right now, you don't understand the law. Nobody understands because they don't know what. There's so many laws now, and they're so complicated because they keep making all kinds of laws. But when you have a true republic, the system of laws become very simplified, and now everybody knows what their rights are, and they also know what their responsibilities are, because a true republic is based on individual liberty and personal responsibility. It's not like a free-for-all. It is properly defined objective laws that protects your rights and clarify how you relate with others. I want to just quickly touch on some of the things that distinguishes the UIC as a movement in terms of our policies. So, as you know, we're for a true republic because we want to protect the life, the liberty, and property rights of all citizens equally. You know from this discussion that we believe in the rule of law, not the rule of parties, not the rule of politicians, but we want to focus government on enforcing laws that protects your rights. We also don't believe in creating a country that's based on partisan or any other form of division, but respecting everybody's rights so that we can then cooperate in a mutually beneficial way. Number three, you also know that we believe in guaranteeing your security. So it's a security guarantee, personal and business guarantee, meaning no government can come and just suddenly change the laws because they feel like it and make your life miserable or destroy your business or destroy an industry. So this is key to economic development. When people know clearly what the boundaries are and what is allowed and what is permitted, and know that it will stay in place for eternity, they can then plan their lives and plan their businesses with certainty and can make solid investments, which then builds the economy. We're very focused as a government, and this is a role of government to ensure we have proper public infrastructure. What does this mean? You'd think that after 77 years of the two parties, everybody would now have a fixed address. We don't. You'd think that every community would have good roads and sidewalks and street lights. We don't. You'd believe that the country would be very clean and orderly. We don't. Why? Because the government has become very, very big, but not focused on protecting your rights and providing for your needs. It gets bigger and bigger as the government provides for itself and the two political parties and those who are its closest connected few in order to enrich them while keeping you poor. In a true republic, the government is designed differently, so the incentives to do what they're doing now would be gone. And the focus now becomes, hey, let's make sure the Jamaican people have a safe environment, a clean environment, an orderly environment, proper streets, street lights, street signs, sidewalks, green spaces, parks, all the things that you need to have a very good standard of living. It also involves good public order. We ensure civility and law and order, a police service that is designed to protect and serve and respect you as a citizen, as opposed to a police force which is corrupt and mismanaged and under resourced and poorly trained. Six, we want to make sure we have a market driven economy. Why market driven? Because you cannot have any other form of economy and be free. If you have a centralized economy which is controlled by government or any other group of people, whether oligarchy or whatever it is, once it's not driven by the free market, meaning people freely trading with each other, then you're going to have a substandard economy, which gives some people an advantage over others by virtue of access to power and money through government control. So the laws must be such that nobody can use force or fraud to get their way, not even the government. This will reduce the red tape, make your life more efficient, make your life more pleasant, and make government services more comely, more something that you feel better going to. You're not ending up in long lines anymore. You're not having to pay somebody off to get things done fast. It's a more efficient system. You also want to have an education system which is not controlled by politicians, because when that happens, it will actually drive the majority of people to be dumbed down and not to understand the things they need to have. So you want to have an education system which is open, which is vibrant, which is truly public, controlled by the public, not controlled by politicians. And as a result, you're going to have citizens who are more aware, more knowledgeable, and therefore can engage in higher productivity and maximizing their potential, and this will lift the standard of living for all of us right across the board. You want to also have an efficient tax system, which I mentioned earlier on. So we're going to cap the government budget so that the government has to work better at managing its resources as opposed to being free to simply transfer the cost of corruption to you or transfer the cost of waste to you. So we cap government at 10% income tax and 10% sale tax and have no other taxes, and get rid of property taxes so that you become a true property owner. When you buy a property, it's now yours, it's not yours and the government, and you have to pay a rent for eternity. So we're going to create a new Jamaica where taxes are simpler, so the cost of even tax compliance will be reduced significantly. The burden on small business will drop so that you can focus on what you should be focused on: developing high quality products, finding and reaching new markets, and being able to deliver on what your customers want, as opposed to spending thousands of hours and dollars trying to comply with government rules and regulations and filing tax returns. We're going to simplify all of that, make your life easier so that you can make your life richer. We're going to eliminate government borrowing at interest. That's one of the biggest tricks in the book, where they have actually taught us to believe that government needs to borrow money at interest to provide government services. That's it's ridiculous. Why? The government is the owner of the money supply that we have. So it doesn't need to borrow from private lenders in order to do the work of a government. All it has to do is to produce the money and put it into the economy and make sure that that money is matched with productivity and not more. If the money supply is greater than our productive capacity, it will cause artificial inflation. If the money supply is less than our productive capacity, it will cause deflation. If you want to have a solid economy, you want to have true money, which is backed by productivity, instead of fake money, which is simply credit based and allows big banks, central banking, that allows manipulation of volume of money and manipulation of interest rates, which makes a few rich while transferring that cost of making them rich to us by way of inflation and devaluation. And finally, we must have a program to correct the years of inequity that has been carried on. So the UIC has a poverty elimination program, and that's why we have the 10% GCT or sales tax. This tax is dedicated to ensuring every child is properly nourished, properly educated, properly housed, received good health care, so that they can learn and grow and become the citizens of the future who are highly educated, very intelligent, highly productive, and can therefore make sure we protect and defend the Republic of Jamaica once we have transitioned from the oligarchy, from the dictatorial so-called democracy that we're in, to a country that respects and protects our individual sovereignty. I've said a lot. Devon, your turn.
Yeah, so I don't have much time left, but I saw two important comments in the comment section that I want to address. Out of many, one people said people of color don't like to read. That makes it hard to educate them. And then the Jamaican Jankro channel, I don't know why I name it channel, Jankro channel, but yeah, says, how will the UIC address the issue of post-traumatic slave disorder? How will you address the damage done from the history and experience of slavery to the minds of Jamaicans? The reason why I read out those two questions, because they're saying the same thing, right? The fact that our people don't read, and then the fact that our people are suffering from post-traumatic slave disorder. Of course, we've introduced the UIC's educational program, the Learning Advanced curriculum. So to address your question, Jamaican Junker channel, to beat post-traumatic slave disorder, we have to get our people to read. That is the first step. We have to get our people to read, because what I've noticed is that I watch the UIC's page, and I see a lot of people commenting whenever UIC makes a post. They're asking, okay, so where's the UIC's crime plan? Where's the UIC's education plan? Where's the UIC this and where's the UIC that? So it leads me to want to. So I try my best to ask them a question without sounding too condescending or sounding disrespectful. It's very, very hard not to sound that way when it's coming from somebody from the UIC. So we try to be very careful how we talk to people. So we try to say, okay, Even if we say, have you been on the website? For some reason, it sounds disrespectful when we ask questions. And if we say A or B, somebody takes offense. I kid you not. Right? So we try to be very careful with how we respond to people. And I find that people come to the UIC and they haven't read anything on the website. They haven't read anything we've posted. Then we're forced to reduce our post from 1,000 pages to 4 words, right? And then sometimes that does cause confusion. People are saying, what is the UIC saying, right? And the reason why we have to do that is because people don't read, right? We have a very hard time of getting somebody to go on the website and click and read this thing. And even after we bring the content to them and say, hey, have a look at the UIC's crime plan or education plan, tell us what you think. They don't go and read it. So that is the problem that we have. And I can guarantee you, Mr. Patterson, that even the supporters of the JLP or the PNP have never once in their lifetime read their manifesto. That is the problem. And we want our supporters, we want the UIC supporters to read our manifesto, read everything, every single thing. If you find something you disagree with, come talk to us and let's talk about it. I say it all the way, Mr. Patterson. We are a very transparent organization. There are things in the manifesto I don't agree with. And I guarantee you, Mr. Patterson, there are things in the manifesto you don't agree with. Right? But at the same time, we're coming together from a common cause and recognize that it's not about us as an individual, right? It's about what we're bringing to society, what we're bringing to Jamaica. Because what I agree with, it doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with it, Mr. Patterson, right? We have our differences in certain things, but at the end of the day, we are laser focused on one thing, and that one thing is bringing liberty to the Jamaican people, returning sovereignty to the Jamaican people by creating a non-partisan constitutional republic. So when that happens, it does not matter what you like. It doesn't matter what me like. It doesn't matter what you agree with or what me disagree with. All I want to know is that your opinions, your decisions in life does not affect me, and mine does not affect you.
Absolutely. And that is the key thing, Devon. Even though I must admit, everything in the UIC manifesto I agree with. But but the key thing is this. In a free society, you are allowed to be who you want to be, provided who you are does not result in anybody, including yourself, using force or fraud to force it on me. So
Yeah.
I am free and you're free. So let's say I don't like blue. I don't have to wear blue. But I can't force you to say you cannot wear blue. Or if I think that there is a serious virus going around and I would like to take a particular product in order to keep myself safe, that's okay. You might choose that you don't want to take that particular product. You must have the freedom to say you don't want to take that product, and you may have the freedom to choose another product. What we don't want is a government that can able to come and say, no, Mr. Patterson, we have a product that we insist that you take that product. And we're going to also make sure that Devon takes that product. And we're going to block any other products from coming to the market because we don't think that should be the case. That's where the UIC is so important for Jamaica, because we're going to protect the rights and freedom of every single citizen to choose for themselves.
Yeah.
I like to sum it up like this: freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and freedom of choice. In a true republic, the government cannot stop you from freely traveling from east to west any time of day that you choose to travel, as long as in your travels you're not using force or fraud to infringe on the life, the liberty, or property rights of any other citizens. We have a number of questions tonight, but we're supposed to be on for only an hour,
Yeah.
and I have to get
Mr.
ready for
Patterson,
another. Yeah,
before I run, can you put that imagery up on your screen with the difference between the Republic and the
sure. Let me see
or,
if I can do that.
or,
1 second. If
or
I can
maybe
get that.
do you want me to do it?
I think I have it here.
Okay.
Let me see here. Let me see here. Yep, got it. And let me just run down to this one quickly, and let me do this. Can you see it?
1 sec. There we go.
All right, good. So in this image, walk us through it, Devon.
Wait, could you guys hear me just now when I dropped off the screen?
No, I couldn't hear you at all.
Couldn't you hear me? Okay, this will work better. There we go. You can hear me now, right?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
so on the left we have the true republic, and on the right we have the fake republic, right? So we're going to be going through this here. So on the left, the true republic, the Constitution recognizes individual sovereignty. On the right, the fake republic, the Constitution does not recognize individual sovereignty. We go back to true republic, the government becomes a servant. In a fake republic, the government is a ruler. In a true republic, the government protects the rights of the minority from the will of the majority. In a fake republic, the rights of the minority can be overridden by the will of the majority. In a true republic, the power is held by the individual. In a fake republic, power is held by an oligarchy, which is also the elites. In the republic, the true republic, laws are made within the constraints of the constitution. And within the fake republic, the oligarchy, which is the elites, has unlimited power to make laws.
Very clear. Very, very clear. I see somebody asking a question about um, the or making a comment about gay marriage, and I just want to quickly address that. The UIC is not advocating any kind of special arrangement or special protection for any group of Jamaicans. We believe in protecting the rights and freedoms of all Jamaicans. So we're not advocating or in any way seeking to push any particular group's agenda. In fact, we're opposed to having special interest groups being able to use the government to pursue any particular agenda. We want you, the citizen, to be free to choose, for example, your religion, whatever you want. Whatever religion you want to be a part of, that is your choice. Whatever food you want to eat, that is your choice. Whatever values you want to hold, those are your choices. What the government is going to make sure, though, is that you can't impose your values on anyone else. It has to be because somebody agrees and wishes of their own accord to adopt a particular set of views or values. You can only persuade someone. You can't force anyone either by yourself or via a group or via the government. The question is asked, what is the difference between a republic and libertarianism? There are different meanings given to both the word republic and the word libertarian. So the UIC is very clear on what we stand for, just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding. What we stand for is a true republic which protects your sovereignty. It treats you as a separate entity that nobody, no group, or no government has the right to violate your sovereignty, your life, your liberty, and your property rights. However, you want to define that is fine, but we don't want to be confused with either any definitions: libertarianism, communism, socialism, capitalism. Those are all phrases that have different meanings to different people. We even coined our own phrase. We call what we talk about freedomism, because we want it to be very clear that we're about protecting your freedom, your rights, your liberty. We're going to have to go now. I wish we could answer all the questions tonight, but we'll be back to answer more questions. Thank you so very much and have a good night. Take care, Mr. Thompson. We talk soon. See you tomorrow, actually.
Okay. All right. See you.
All the best. Yeah. Bye bye.